we hope that you will feel at home here, because all are welcome in this place. For your health and comfort, please note that there are water stations and bottles of sunscreen located at tables around the courtyard. Please help yourself. That's what the script says. Okay. So that our time in this prayer is not disturbed, please take a moment and check that your cell phone has been turned off. And immediately following our prayer, you're invited to a simple soup lunch in the dining room, which is just over there. So now let us prepare ourselves, our hearts and minds and bodies, for prayer. Lord, after being condemned to death by Pilate, you began your long journey to Calvary. The people you encountered along the way either accepted or rejected you. Pilate and Herod turned their backs to you, whereas Mary and Veronica and the centurion accepted you. As we begin this devotional way of the cross, we also are making a journey of decision to accept you as Lord and Savior, or to reject you. By listening to the thoughts of the biblical characters you met along the way, may our hearts be moved to hear your call, a call to change and to follow you. Amen. Amen. First station, Pilate condemns Jesus. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Well, of course, I was there at the trial. History will probably judge that I could have prevented the death of the Nazarene. But try to look at this from my point of view. Those Jews, they were a horrible nation of people. Hard-headed, contemptuous, violent. There was never any pleasing them. Once, when I put portraits of the emperor into the Jewish temple, the Jews complained to the emperor himself. Even Rome feared their fanaticism and never backed me when I took action against them. I had but one thought: my advancement out of this backward, uncivilized nation. But then, the Jewish elders brought this harmless rabbi to be put to death. This Jesus Christ, he told me he was the Son of God. Well, I'm a superstitious man, I don't deny that at all. I don't like persecuting gods, not even the Jewish ones. So I did my very best to set him free. But the mob, they called for the release of a murderer, a certain Barabbas, to be set free. Well, can you imagine what it was like hearing that mob screaming, shouting, "If this man goes free, Pilate, then you are no friend of Caesar"? One more report to Rome, that would have brought an end to my career. You have to think of yourself, wouldn't you agree? And you only get ahead by playing the court game. So, I condemned him. If you had been there, would you have done differently?
The second station, Jesus accepts the cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
By your holy cross, you have redeemed the world.
Call me Barabbas, or any name you want. I watched the Nazarene as he took up his cross, and I saw him fall again and again along the way. You may be wondering what I was doing there following him. It's not that I became his disciple or anything like that. I was curious, just as you'd be curious about a person who was your free ticket out of jail. Frankly, I didn't understand the man. He did not act like the Messiah was supposed to act. You see, I appreciate hatred. Vicious, cutting hatred. I have killed Romans before, and I fully intended to keep on killing them until every last one was driven from our land. But Jesus, he didn't hate the Romans. He didn't intend to kill them. He didn't even curse the soldiers who crowned his head with thorns. Instead, after his trial, he stood there like a lamb as they mocked him and beat him and spat in his face. He took up the cross without protest, like he was destined to carry it. No, I don't understand. I don't understand anyone who doesn't hate his enemy, who doesn't fight back. Yes, I was there that Friday. Were you there too?
The third station, Jesus falls the first time. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because you have redeemed the world.
You asked me if I was there? Me, Herod? Of course I was there. Out of my palace window, I saw him carry his cross and stumble to the ground. He had some message about serving others. He once said and told that everyone needs to pick up their cross to be his disciple. What a fool Jesus was, babbling about sacrifice and selflessness. What did that get him but death? After all, what is life all about except for its many pleasures? Wouldn't you agree? To me, life is such a bore. Amusement is the only thing that cures the boredom. But back to Jesus. I could have saved him. If he'd have just humored me, if he'd have just pulled a few tricks, showed me a miracle, even some magic. No. He turned out to be a simpleton, and a silent one at that, who wouldn't even talk to me. Yes, I was there. I saw him stumble to the ground with his cross. Seems like the whole world was there. Surely you were there too.
The fourth station, Jesus meets his mother. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because you have redeemed the world.
Here am I, his own mother. And I couldn't recognize him. The shock went through my body like the tremor of an earthquake when I saw my son carrying a cross. Then Jesus found my eyes. Although I saw piercing pain in his eyes, I also saw peace. Suddenly, all the earlier memories began to flood my soul. The memory of that day, long, long ago, when I said yes to a messenger of God. How could I have known then what that yes would cost me? Fleeing with Joseph to save our child from a mad king's sword, searching all over Jerusalem for 3 days for our little boy. Nor could I ever forget that day when, as a grown man, he laid down his carpenter's tools once and for all. Of course I was puzzled as he prepared to leave, saying those strange words, "I have my Father's work to do." Father's work was dying on a cross. The Father's work. When I saw his bruised and swollen face, faith was all I had left. Faith alone helped me accept God's will that Friday when the universe howled with insane laughter. and darkness enveloped the sun. Jesus' eyes said to me that Good Friday, believe in God, trust in a loving Father.
Lord of the universe, the fifth station, Simon helps Jesus carry the cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by the Holy Ghost we have believed.
I was coming in from the fields to do some trading when my curiosity led me into the crowds to see what the commotion was all about. Before I knew what happened, a Roman centurion seized me by the arm, forced me to carry a criminal's cross. Under my breath, I cursed my rotten luck. Wrong place at the wrong time. I felt sorry for the poor fellow who was going to die on the cross. I was mighty glad it wasn't me. Still, I hated the weight of those wooden beams and the roughness of the road. So I asked myself, why has this happened to me? Simon, a poor farmer. Why do bad things always happen to me? But then I saw the face of Jesus, a face I could never forget. He nodded his head as if to thank me. Suddenly the cross seemed lighter. It was no longer a burden for me to carry. Yes, this event was forever etched in my heart. As it turned out, I was in the right place at the right time. And I am thankful I can help him carry his burden. What about you? Were you in the crowd that day?
the sixth station, Veronica wipes the face of Jesus. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
I had known Jesus only from a distance. I listened to his preaching and his dreams of a kingdom where the wolf would lie down with the lamb. I heard his burning words of hope on the mountainside. I saw him heal others. And I knew his special kindness toward women. I remember him saying once that when you give a cup of water to the least of your brothers and sisters, you give it to him. When I heard he was condemned to die, I hastened to be by the side of the road leading to Golgotha. I heard him groaning under the weight of the heavy cross. On his face were blood and grimy sweat. I pulled off my veil and ran to wipe his face. As the soldier raised his whip, I winced, but instead of lashing out, he shook his head in disgust and lowered his arm. The master's bloodshot, piercing eyes encountered mine and seemed to say, "Thank you, Veronica." As I removed my veil from Jesus' face, I was surprised. His gift for my small deed of kindness was a rough imprint of his face. I helped Jesus in my own way. What about you? Were you there when Jesus passed your way?
Jesus, what a beautiful, spontaneous gesture. Veronica wiping your bruised and bleeding face. Fearlessly, she seized the moment that would never come her way again. Make us spontaneous Christians who are not afraid to take a risk. Like Veronica, may we comfort you when we discover you sick, whether in the hospital or in the home. May we find you in the faces of the poor and the suffering. Remind us that the smallest kindness done for the least of our brothers and sisters is done for you. The seventh station, Jesus falls the second time. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
I stood there along the road and watched as Jesus fell for the second time. He shivered with pain and exhaustion as he collapsed to the ground. It seemed this drama would soon be over. I was only performing my duties as the high priest when they brought Jesus to me and said, "Caiaphas, this is a dangerous man. Not only has he blasphemed by claiming to be God, but he has misled and corrupted the people." Besides breaking the Sabbath, Jesus predicted the destruction of the temple, and he drove out the money changers on his own authority. After all, who was this Jesus but an ordinary laborer, an unlettered carpenter's son who had the arrogance to challenge our lawyers and rabbis? But most important of all, I had to protect the nation. This so-called Messiah, who had the gift for deceiving the people, would destroy the peace and bring that Roman horde crashing down upon us. Better that one man die than the whole nation be destroyed. I saw Jesus fall that day, and I wasn't certain he was ever going to get up again. Did you also see him fall?
The eighth station, Jesus meets the weeping women. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
By the Holy Cross you have redeemed the world.
You won't get any names from me. It's safer to be an anonymous mourner. I was part of a group of women who accompany and care for criminals condemned to be crucified. But Jesus was no ordinary criminal. Our leaders had accused him not only of breaking the law, but also of being a blasphemer. This puzzled me. How could such a gentle, harmless healer, with a reputation for doing so much good, be condemned to such a cruel death? But who am I to judge? Me. Just an ordinary mother. And it wasn't until we saw him along the way
that we realized how cruel they were to him. I was touched. My tears became genuine. And imagine our surprise when he looked at us and said, "Don't weep for me. Rather, weep for yourselves and for your children." That alarmed me because his manner was that of a prophet. He seemed like a man with a message I didn't comprehend. I didn't know the mystery of Jesus, but I believed he was someone special. Perhaps the Messiah. What about you? What do you believe?
The ninth station, Jesus falls the third time. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because of your holy cross, you have redeemed the world.
No. I was there. Roman centurion. Part of the greatest war machine in the world. I watched. King of the Jews crashed to the ground. It was helpless. Get up. Again. Even now, my memory haunts me as I remember what we had done to Jesus in the courtyard. How we mocked him, crowning his head with thorns. And played vicious games. Striking his blindfold face. It was my official duty to see that he would die. On that Friday. There's another criminal, another person to be crucified with Roman efficiency. But then I began to study this man, knowing he was far more than a man. It was far more the lighting of darkness that influenced me. Man, I had seen hundreds of men face death on a cross. And they cursed and screamed. But not Jesus. He was different. He had a strange sense of peace about himself that went far beyond my understanding. He forgave those who taunted him under the cross. And in the end, he died like a God with dignity. Finally, under the cross, I was driven to my knees, driven to accept him for what they said he was, the Son of God. I asked him to forgive me for my cruelty and hardness. I was there when he fell the third time. Surely you were there as well.
The 10th station, Jesus is stripped of his clothing. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by the Holy Cross you have redeemed the world.
Watching Jesus get stripped of his clothing, I knew that I was next. I hated him because he didn't curse the Romans like I did. I despised him for his peaceful face. And finally, I mocked him because they said he was the Messiah. If he were the Messiah, then he should have led us to safety from the scourge of the Romans. So yes, I baited him. I tried to get him mad at me, at the Romans, at anyone. And when I couldn't get him angry, I begged him. Save us if you've got God's power. Save us if you're the Son of God. As a desperate criminal condemned to death on the cross, I'd have done anything to save my hide. I wanted to live a little longer. But he seemed to accept death as if it were a door to some greater life. I watched while he stood with dignity, while the Romans humiliated him. He filled my soul with bitterness. Were you there watching also?
The 11th station, Jesus is nailed to the cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by the Holy Cross you have redeemed the world.
When they began nailing Jesus to the cross, I heard gasps of pain, and yet no curse from his mouth. I told my fellow prisoner to keep quiet. We deserved what we got. But Jesus, he was different. From the days of my youth, I was a liar and a thief. Later, I became a professional who stole for a living, and a murderer who killed many Romans after joining the insurgents. The thought of right from wrong rarely passed through my head. But something in Jesus made me look at myself, face myself, maybe for the first time. People say he talked of forgiveness, mingled with the rough crowd of the sinners, and promised a better life in another world. I didn't really understand his mysterious kingdom or how it would come about, but I believed in it. Likewise, he talked to God as if he were talking to his own Father. Yes, I saw Jesus get nailed to a cross, open his arms as if he wanted to embrace the world. And then I heard Jesus call my name. Dismiss, he said. This day you'll be with me in paradise. I was there. I became a believer that day. Did you become a believer too?
The 12th station, Jesus dies on the cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by the Holy Cross you have redeemed the world.
You have heard my name, Magdalene. You may believe rumors about me. They are not true. What is true? I was with Jesus at the foot of the cross and watched the life draining from him. My master, my teacher, my friend, my beloved, the one who freed me from the oppression of 7 devils, dies like a slave. I am ravished with anger, pain, and confusion. What can we do without him? How can one who dies like a slave be a liberator? Mary, his mother, is beside me. We watch and listen to Jesus gasp for breath. Then he speaks. Forgive them. They know not what they do. Forgive them. They know not what they do. As I gaze at his battered body, his words of forgiveness echo in my mind and my heart. This is love. His love. Love. Love somehow gives me the power to forgive. Were you there? Were you there when he asked us to forgive?
The 13th station, Jesus is laid in the arms of his mother. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
You have redeemed the world.
My sons had fled. What irony that I sadly remained to watch the soldiers lay Jesus' dead body in his mother's arms. I touched Mary's shoulder while she cradled him as though he was a small child again, and she rocked him to sleep. I felt ashamed when I thought of how I'd asked Jesus to place my boys, James and John, at his right and left in positions of honor. Jesus had asked my sons if they could drink of the cup of suffering. At the time, they didn't understand him, even when, during the Last Supper, he passed the cup of wine which would signify his coming death. Only later did I realize why Jesus had to suffer and why my petty ambitions for my sons would seem foolish and silly. Only under the cross did I understand why Jesus had acted like a slave when at the Last Supper he washed the feet of my sons. I was there when Jesus died, and I thought of his cup of suffering. Were you there too? Could you drink of his cup?
The 14th station, Jesus is laid in the tomb. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
After preparing Jesus' body for burial, I helped Joseph, my friend, place Jesus' broken body in the tomb. In truth, Joseph was braver than I, asking for his body, knowing very well the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees would take note of that action. I admired the rabbi, but from a distance. Whenever I met him, it was always at night, under the cover of darkness, so that no one would see me with him. Call that human respect, or whatever you want. I was afraid of what my peers might say or do if they knew I was attracted to Jesus. I secretly admired his teaching, too. Although sometimes he puzzled me, like when he said, Nicodemus, to enter the kingdom of God, you've got to be born through water and the Spirit. Well, after the crucifixion, I no longer cared about risking my fellow Pharisees' displeasure. I was angry and ashamed. They'd given Jesus to the Romans to be crucified. I was even angrier at myself for not stepping forward sooner. I was there when Joseph rolled the stone against the entrance of the tomb. What about you? Were you there on that dark Friday?